When it comes to business,
You'll find the experts here.
Voice America Business Network.
Welcome to CIO Talk Radio with your host, Sanjo Gal. All comments, views, and opinions expressed on this show are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers. Here's Sanjo Gal.
Good morning and welcome to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Today's topic is IT insourcing becoming the end thing? Our guests for today's show are John Stevenson, who's the Vice President for SIM, and he's also the former CIO for Sharp Electronics Corporation. And we also going to have Ashwin Velodi, who's the Senior Vice President for EIK Group. So, John, how are you doing?
Well, good morning. Looking forward to helping our viewers and listeners here at CIO Talk Radio to walk through some ideas for this subject.
So we will also have Ashwin join us shortly. Meanwhile, John, question for you. Where do you see this wave of insourcing come from? Was this something which was creeping in slowly but surely, or is this something which is just because we have gone through this roller coaster ride with respect to economy?
As I have witnessed it in especially the last 8 months, there have been a couple of factors come up that have changed the whole staffing model for IT. Whether there's one specific item that drives it, I'm not quite sure. But if you're seeing the opportunity to be more efficient in your workforce, and that efficiency, wherever sourced from, helps your ability to navigate with less management or with less strain in your overall workforce, then no different than any other practical decision you're trying to make as an executive in a corporation, you're going to try to make those changes. But the change from offshore to onshore, some people have subscribed to it as maybe being due to the unrest of a more available workforce, as some of our IT family now in companies are losing their jobs, and there's more available talent within the United States in particular than there has been in 5 to 6 years. They're believing that that's putting some pressure on some corporations to bring back into the United States some job tasking that they needed to send out. Not so sure I'm seeing as much of that as I have seen what I call the practical thinking about what's the best opportunity we have to staff with the least strain and the least cost to the corporation right now.
Ashwin, what do you think is happening because of which, while we were, we were going gung-ho with this outsourcing bandwagon and we wanted to do more and more and more, and now suddenly we are talking about insourcing?
I mean, from our standpoint as an analyst, I think what we are seeing are a couple of trends. It's always when things go well, we are all guilty of excesses. So once there are a lot of businesses that have taken to outsourcing what I call from a single single way of thinking, which is, hey, let me just cut cost, or I have got this tactical project, let me just send it to the cheapest resource possible. While there is benefit to that, that's like aiming a live gun on your head and waiting for the bullet to fire at any moment. Because what has happened is, while they seem to pay off in the short term, let's say a few years ago, they were always misaligned with business strategy of that company. They were always having questionable executive sponsorship, and these reasons got exaggerated once you have an economic downturn in the country that sources the work out, and then you have all sorts of questions come up, and it's the thing seems highly business-wise highly irrelevant, and like who was thinking about it in the first place? So that's one phenomena where people indulged in excesses on either side. I mean, BPO to an extreme. I mean, there are things that you need client presence. You need a good mix of onshore and offsite. But I strongly believe a lot of this should be driven by the business strategy of a company, not just driven by one, like a one-track approach, either to save cost or to access skills or to avoid investments. All of them unilaterally would not make sense. Second, I think if you can see, there has been, I would use the word backlash, even before this meltdown on things getting outsourced. We have heard cases in between over the last few years of people misinterpreting or taking it the way that, hey, you can't just ship jobs from A to B because it impacts the country A or the company A in country A. So that in this economic environment, my belief is it'll be very tough. It'll be very tough for companies or organizations to balance business strategies with now very visible fears of how can you ever do that? How can you ship a job X to a country X when we ourselves are suffering? The answer is not known, but that will be a very, very legitimate fear and concern in the next year or so.
So, Ashwin, you mentioned something very interesting, that the driver was primarily cost, where whenever during the good period when outsourcing was flourishing, whenever you'd ask an organization, why are you outsourcing, IT, for example, or in this case you also mentioned BPO, they said this is a strategic move. This is not cost savings alone. So are we saying everything else was just a mask? It was primarily to save a buck?
So let me put some things out there. Cost cutting is a legitimate business goal. Okay, it's a very legitimate business goal. It has its absolute place, especially where you are looking for efficiencies of skill and access. What my point is, and this is not to say that everyone indulge in it, but a large, once, as you said earlier, Atul, is that Sanjog, is that as excesses start happening, a lot of companies just jumped on the bandwagon. To them, I put this squarely on them, because it's like you can't, you have to think it through. There are many places where I have seen in my past experience, this has not been well thought of. Like, how will the program be managed? Will outsourcing, somebody just thinks that it's a snapshot in time and it will reduce complexity just by having a 7-year relationship. In fact, that could just be the biggest death knell for that company, because you're tied with a interesting structural contract that doesn't allow both parties to move that much. So that is my point. Cost cutting is legitimate, but a lot of the other aspects of outsourcing a business process or outsourcing for strategic reasons did not seem that well thought out. Now, that doesn't mean some companies were not successful. They certainly were, and the point is to kind of follow those best practices and not the rest.
John, question. I'll just take a follow-up question from what Ashwin just said. Would you say insourcing would be a good option for companies who did not do outsourcing right, or would you say this is an across-the-board strategic measure to take care of the current situation within the enterprise and or within the nation?
It's interesting. You've got two constituencies there you just mentioned. I think the wedge is in place when outsourcing has not gone well for the navigators of that process to say we need to do something different, and in the present economy, they may be able to do something different, i.e. insourcing either to a contract outfit or even back to in-house staff at somewhat practical prices as a change, and they can parade the opportunity to say we've got problems with our outsourcing environment, we're going to do something different and bring it back on shore. The other, if you haven't done much outsourcing, what I've seen, and I'd love Ashwin's thoughts on this, the bell ringing for organizations to lower costs, but maybe not lower the amount of go-forward progress they're making in certain of their IT initiatives is there. In other words, can they take an opportunity to lower cost however they're going to do it, projects that when the market turns, they want to have accomplished and on board so that they can take advantage of a new market when it arrives. Some companies are that far forward in their thinking. Others are just merely hunkering down and just trying to get their cost-cutting as dramatically done as they possibly can, and it can either be onshore or offshore.
Question. If there was nobody was afraid, this is Who Moved My Cheese book. I always keep referring to that phrase. What would you do if you were not afraid? Afraid of the meltdown, afraid of your business not going right? Would you have introduced insourcing into the nation and into an enterprise if we were not afraid? John.
You came to me first. I look at sourcing with a very balanced eye. It's where is the best capability to get your task done at an effective price. And so it doesn't matter to me as much where that sourcing is accomplished. It's what is in balance the best opportunity. And there are multiple factors there. How much management overhead is there? How much translation of a corporate style, a corporate's focus into specifications that somebody can execute, whether it's somebody sitting right upstairs or downstairs in the same building with you, or if it's somebody literally across the oceans. What in balance is the best way to get the job done? And where it lands has to do with where the best talent at the best price may be, with all those factors included. So have I just punted on you? Yes, I have.
All right, let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages, and let's ask Ashwin what he thinks the world would do if they were not afraid of what has happened so far in terms of financial meltdown and other issues that we have faced in the economy and overall business environment. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Up-to-date business and financial news. Call now and get the financial information you need. 866-472-5790. 866-472-5790.
The experts are here.
Voice America Business Network.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
Now, Mrs. Johnson, before we close on your mortgage loan, I want to make sure you remember Mike.
Hi, you can trust me. I'm African American, just like you.
So, here's the low monthly payments and interest rates we promised, and here's where they triple.
The rest of this stuff is just here to make sure that we get your house when you can't pay us back.
What a lovely house.
Predatory lenders are never this easy to spot. Call us at 866-222-FAIR and protect yourself with the facts. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Fair Housing Alliance and the Ad Council.
There are so many challenges facing management today around the world. The new Management Network is here to provide practical insight and solutions for many of these challenges. Hosts Don and Bonnie Folk will explore topics designed to help you get the competitive upper hand, including organizational tools, personality and leadership, cutting-edge management tips, and much more. Join the new Management Network live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Business Network.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Gal.
Welcome back. So, Mr. Ashwin, tell us what the world would have done if the world was not afraid in terms of outsourcing versus insourcing.
Yeah. I think, guys, that is just one aspect of the challenge we face. So how I would look at it if we were, the world was not afraid and you were just executing was very simple. Companies need to have, based on their research and their vision, a solid business strategy. For example, somebody might want to be the next Walmart. Somebody might want to be the next Apple. So the approach should begin right there at what is my plan? What am I trying to do? Which segments am I targeting? What products or services am I selling? Now we all say that, well, that's easy. Well, actually, if you do enough thinking on this, that should become your foundation to decide, okay, once I have decided what am I about as a company, even if you're an existing organization, what is my focus area for the next 5 years? Where am I seeing? Is my strategy growth, preservation, both, or just cost cutting? Based on these themes, organizations or departments within a company can be all marshaled together to act in a single direction. That is fundamental to if we had fear or not. I still highly recommend it to every company because that's the way you cannot react saying, well, this company is losing money this quarter, let's just do only tactical steps. It has to align with what a person is, what a company or a leadership is about in that company. That's first. Second, I would also say that you would have to do that even if there is fear or not, is solve the problem almost as along the lines of what John said, based on where maximum X can be achieved. And why I'm saying X is it could be the target is profits, or somebody is in such a growth mode the target is just revenues, or somebody is saying, well, I need to prepare my business for acquisition coming out of this recession, so I need to just be a lean and mean machine. So my advice to folks listening would be, think along those lines. What are we going to come out of at the end of this thing? And then, irrespective of fear or not, and then take solid actions internally and externally to follow through or execute on it. And insourcing could be an option or outsourcing could be an option, but then they start to become part of a bigger puzzle rather than just like a piecemeal solution.
Now, the way at which we went about doing outsourcing or other globalization, we took some measures to globalize our company, and we spoke about anytime, anywhere computing, anytime, anywhere sourcing. Did we go about this in too fast? I mean, it was almost like a rocket ship before we had our act together at our base camp. Did we, go and ignite the rocket and then suddenly it went too high, out of control, and then it came crashing down? Is that what has happened? Is that a good analogy to what happened, John?
Well, there was and has been this whole decade a rush to consider sourcing alternatives. Some of it was driven by the cost per hour of a university graduated developer or other resource onshore. When the corporations kept having a hunger to do more and more things in IT, whether it was as practical as completing and installing ERP solutions to going forward with business intelligence to all of the new wave technologies, mobile workforce, etc. The cost of doing that, perhaps as a percent of the enterprise total effective cost, kept growing perhaps past what was acceptable for the executives. So CIOs and many in their executive teams said, we've got to see if we can sustain this momentum in IT sophistication and growth. And we've got got to look at every alternative to deliver at a price that's as effective as we can make it. And the word effective often meant a rush to other resources to get the job done at a much less cost per hour if the hours were necessary to begin with.
When the cost itself is not less anymore, so do we keep following the sun and eventually exhaust that whole thing and then say, okay, say no to outsourcing?
Well, I'd love to hear Ashwin's take on this comment now.
Yeah.
Do you always bid an opportunity to do work, starting with how can you handle it with in-house staff or growing in-house staff? How can you handle it with firms that have a strong preference or predilection to having onshore contracting consulting resources, or bidding it with teams that have multi-level resources outside your corporation, onshore and offshore, and then who do you believe will give you the best delivery at the best bid price?
Yeah. So let me take Sanjog's earlier question and answer it and tie in John's comment. You mentioned anywhere sourcing and anywhere connectivity. That's the it's interesting you mentioned those words because that's our at Yankee Group. That is our primary mission. We focus heavily on what we call the impact of the anywhere revolution on the economy. And guys, it's important in this context for let's say two reasons. One, a lot of it is not under the control of, a lot of what has happened or is going to happen is not under the control of the businesses or enterprises that are using these services. Why do I say that? See, at the root cause of all this is the convergence or the uniformity of what is possible with IP technology. Now, IP, whether we like it or not, the progress has been so fantastic and mind-boggling from from standardization, from connectivity, from speeds and bandwidth, from the ability to remote desktop share, from the ability to move large bits and bytes of data across continents effortlessly. That has, what I call, created the ultimate juggernaut. I mean, it can't be stopped. It won't be stopped. It might be slowed down due to the economy, like today's situation, but it won't be stopped. Now, what does that do? That causes organizations and enterprises, CIOs, to obviously, because they are under pressure from their businesses, to take advantage of this phenomena. You can take, for example, one prediction we came up with is wired ports will be replaced by wireless ports. We all have it in our personal life. Wireless is taking more of a predominance in our lives, and that phenomena, just as an illustration, starts to tell us what is happening as technology gets more powerful, more standardized, bandwidth is available, usage goes up, and consumers of these enterprises and the enterprises themselves want all sorts of benefits out of this. Now, one of that thing is anywhere sourcing, because what has happened is it has allowed work to shift seamlessly, and then, as Sanjog mentioned, you can follow the sun. But that is, in my view, if you sit back and analyze, a fundamental outcome of how enabling technologies have made that happen. One. Second is the whole aspects of skills. John, you're absolutely right. I mean, it has to be that work generally, by all sorts of economic theory, work has to be done competitively where skills are available at the right price. It's just a basic supply-demand equation with the skill angle added to it. Now, these guidelines or these principles have made it take off like a rocket ship. It is not because somebody or some two companies, some big multinational wished it. It is the convergence of all these forces coming as a perfect storm that has unleashed this happening. We strongly believe it will continue. And if I go to the second piece about how do you bid for work, maybe I can tackle it, I don't know, Sanjog, separately or now. But that completely depends on those two mechanics that I talked about. So a lot of companies, if you see the big groups who are big outsourcers, today have what is called near sourcing, outsourcing, right sourcing, every single adjective around sourcing. Why? Right? And the reason is very simple. It's like we want to be close to the client. We want to give the client, again, the customer, enterprise customer, all options. All options, again, in this what Friedman calls the flat world, the anywhere connected world is, you want to do work out of Poland for certain cost basis, go ahead. We can bid or no bid based on that arrangement. You want to really get work done in the least cost, here are the trade-offs, but I'll be able to ship bits and bytes wherever and get the job done. So that seems very appealing, and we can talk later on what are the challenges as that took off. And that's, to me, what brought the ship down a little bit.
Yeah.
Sanjo, as I sit in a number of CIO gathering locations with different organizations, Society for Information Management, some of our trade press sponsored meetings in the last 6 months, usually the question has come up, how are you staffing? And what changes are you seeing in your staffing equation? A couple of factors come out clearly. One is if you've had a satisfying relationship with a source organization, often that source organization is going to do everything they can to keep that satisfaction high and to continue to retain and maybe even accelerate their business relationship with you. The astute sourcers are doing that. At the same time, the availability of talent today is higher than it has been in 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
At the 1 year to 10 year mark for staff. Not quite sure yet at the executive levels how that's all coming out, but I suspect there's more at that level also. So the CIOs are not evolving to a change model just for change as much as they're keeping a practical eye on how much work can they afford to do. And that changes how much sourcing is going on. If they've been told we can't go forward with development on 3/4 of your planned project load for 2009 and 2010, then if it's mainly sourced, 3/4 of that sourcing work is going to shrink. But other than that, they may prefer to stay intact with a successful relationship source-wise or a successful team in-house. They'll do what they can to keep that as intact as possible.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages, and let's even look at that trend where the outsourcing companies, in fact, are opening up offices back in the United States, just one of the country which is outsourcing, and seeing if they could be prepared for this insourcing way where the business starts coming into United States for software development from rest of the world or from within United States into United States. It's interesting to see this phenomena happening. How much of that is being proactive or how much of that is fear-driven? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back and discuss.
Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now toll-free, 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
Do you need directions to solid financial future? If so, the Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman will provide you with a roadmap to making smart money decisions in every area of your personal finances. Join Jordan every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern for the Money Answer Show on the Voice America Business Channel. Learn how and where to get the best deals on mortgages, cars, and insurance. Find out the best ways to save for college and retirement. Get out of debt, improve your credit rating, and save on your taxes. The Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman will provide you with great tips on investment opportunities in real estate, stocks, annuities, and other investment vehicles. That's the Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman on the Voice America Business Channel every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Adding fractions is nothing.
For real?
Look, these are denominators. You multiply this one so that it's the same as that, and you add them up.
Man, that's easy. Charles Bennett dreamed of returning to the old neighborhood as a teacher, but without money for college, only half of his dream came true. He's back in the old neighborhood.
Well, enough math. I gotta deliver these sandwiches.
Please support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. A message from the UNCF and the Ad Council.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjo Gal.
Welcome back. So we were talking about that organization, at least one organization that I know of, which is opening up its outposts in the United States, for example, while they are primarily from another outsourcing destination country. And they are planning for having hundreds of developers working here in order to capture that market share, which is expected to be developing in case this insourcing kicks in. Now, that is going to create another interesting, dynamics of the way outsourcing is done. You do on-site, onshore versus offshore outsourcing. We do, and how the whole competition landscape plays out. So, John, what do you think is happening here? Is this again a proactive move from a savvy businessman, or is this something which is a fear-driven strategic move, if you will?
The fear is on the other side, of course, as we had talked about earlier in the show this morning. Do the corporations, are they driving a bit of a fear factor about how can they get right-sized acceptably in this difficult market for sales and profitability? So if you're facing that type of client, customer, how can you best assuage that fear and then give them a little bit more of what they would like to have, which is maybe a different balance in their staff resources. This all comes together at the same time that for the first time in this decade, I believe we'll see a very flat, if not slightly declining, cost per hour resource in the United States. When the economic times are as tight as they are and as many staffers and across many industries have been laid off, and plus there's no new hiring going on in many firms, your price escalation that's been going on this entire decade for IT critical skills should be flattening down. A good sourcing firm may be able to take good advantage of that and provide hiring relief for people who've been let go from their long-term W-2 assignments, and some of these talent points are extraordinary. They're no longer maybe the lesser performers.
So, Ashwin, do you see this trend, as something which will, in a way, bring jobs back into the nation regardless? That's the only thing his employer would change from an outsourcer to an outsourcee.
It'll bring some jobs back. I think what is happening, in my view, as you said, one of the big companies have taken that step, is that, and that's just an example of how our companies who are outsourcers are reacting to the economic climate, the political climate, and the hard realities of running a business, because they are not wanting to lose any share, any mind share based on these three dimensions of economic reality and political reality, that they want to now take this step. So to me, it seems reactive that step seems reactive. It is legitimate because there is very few options left on the table. But what will happen again is this phenomena will force the industry, both outsourcer and outsourcee, based on cost per hour metrics as just one metric. Okay, it's not the final decider, but as one metric to figure out where is the new equilibrium. Is this going to be the de facto approach? In my view, assuming that some aspects of capitalism still continues and businesses are absolutely striving to satisfy shareholders and give returns to shareholders, profits or EBITDA will be paramount, and it will revert back to where can the job be done at the most cost-optimum level. Now, that equilibrium right now has been a little bit upset given the political and economic realities, and the outsourcer and the organization that outsource both are trying to adjust to that. And there is absolutely, in the case of U.S., some more talent available based on the large volumes of layoffs that are happening this year.
So would you think that the way the price differential was, which basically created outflow from United States, for example, as an outsourcing country to an outsourcing destination like India or China, now because of the lifestyle changes, the prices and the salaries and everything else and the costs are increasing at those destination countries as well. So now they're almost at a point where there's not much of a delta left. If the salaries and rates, etc., flatten here in the United States and they keep increasing on the other side, even if they flatten but the delta is not enough, then we are on a truly a flat world where anybody could be using anybody else's resources. So there is no outsourcer versus outsourcee going forward. Or should not, they should not be, if cost was the main criteria anyway. Ashwin.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I've said earlier in the morning, I don't believe cost should be the main criteria, especially in this anywhere connected economy where you enjoy the successes of connectedness, but you also enjoy the perils of connectedness. And that's what we are facing in 2009, the peril aspect of it. But this is a fascinating point you raised, Sanjog, because if the cost basis is coming roughly to parity, what will be the outcome? I think here is where, in my analysis, I would lay it to 2 points again. One is this aspect, this trend. Let me highlight this. This is a fascinating dimension of what I call, reading some stuff as well on this topic, is the aspect of economic nationalism, where folks of every country, every geography, if protectionist barriers are raised, all for the right reason, there's hardly a soul who can defend crass shipping of jobs from country A to country B. It's not defensible. But on the other extreme, if protectionism raises its heads, you have this other thing to consider. The largest middle-class markets, where a lot of the services of a lot of the advanced economies are offered, or where only growth is offered, is in the countries you mentioned, China and India. So what happens if every country, in this theoretical argument, raises barriers and puts tariffs and taxes and makes life tough for each other? That, to me, seems a highly counterproductive and a very knee-jerk reaction to what is happening. So while it is absolutely, there's no business in its right mind that can, without considering the political ramifications, ship jobs A to B, but we have to find a new equilibrium. We have to figure out in this anywhere economy where things are connected, how can we all benefit? How can the pie be increased rather than the pie being divided and shrunk? Now, there are many examples. For example, in the service provider or the telco space, the aspect of cloud computing and virtualization offers many benefits technology-wise that should enable this business discussion to happen at an easier level. So, for example, there are companies in the U.S. that offer services at a very economic cost in the so-called cloud. Now, we'll see whether this small sliver of a phenomena takes off. These are all the trends that will try to, in my view, as I said in my earlier point, bring us to a new equilibrium where services are adjusted for this reality, outsourcers adjust to this reality, and outsourcee also understands this. Otherwise, if we shift to the extreme of economic nationalism, I mean, the disasters await us.
John, do you like what he's saying?
Wow, Ashwin, you've put a lot together there in a well-rounded series of thoughts. As especially India drove their own home economy cost up for their mid-level talent, their trained talent, and almost got ahead of their education, their very prolific educational systems ability to develop additional resources and get them seated in locations where they can do offshore work. That did bring back to a number of corporations and a number of sourcing organizations where and how do we develop the global talent pool. I was fascinated to hear major companies, both some of the domestic sourcing companies as well as the internationally based sourcing companies, say we're going into Cambodia and Vietnam to uplift further educational capabilities there and English and Western cultural adaptation so that we again can provide a price point that's attractive to Europe and the United States for sourcing outside of their local economies. Going back to the beginning of this decade, we kind of set a series of steps on that pushed the offshoring, outsourcing phenomena. When the dot-com bubble burst, our youth were astute enough to see, as they were heading into our universities or as they were determining what their business field of choice was going to be in those universities, we saw rapid drop-off in ITIS curriculums as a major of choice. So through the eyes and ears of our newest members joining IT staffs here in this decade, we were seeing in some universities as few as 1/3 the number of graduates coming out into computer resources. Why beat your brains out in a very tough discipline such as IS, ISNS, MIS in a university and then come out and find the jobs are meager because perhaps many of the jobs at the new associate level are being offshored? Go into other fields where you have a higher opportunity to get a job immediately from graduation with your bachelor's degree or perhaps your master's degree. Whether that'll change now, I can't tell. I think the economy's against us because the 5 to 8 to 10-year graduates are going to be competing perhaps more for the 2 and 3 year experienced positions and perhaps still keep a flattening. But when all of your professional degrees in the United States are looking at a very difficult 2008 graduation time frame and perhaps again 2009 and going into the early part of 2010, where's the best opportunity to go forward and what opportunities can we take advantage of to get the youngsters in those universities moving forward into careers and in our field? And how can we right-size our own needs versus the needs that are developing in the growing economies as well as in the mature economies in Europe and elsewhere?
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages and look at the fact that, okay, fine, we want to do insourcing, but are we truly ready for it from a people and processes standpoint? We did talk about some students or the upcoming workforce may not be as incented to take computer science or other technology degrees for them to be ready for joining the workforce and help the IT, overall. However, in terms of the existing workforce that we have, the level of sophistication in terms of the processes and the technology know-how that they have, the skill that they have, are they ready to deliver at the same levels? Because frankly, as outsourcing organizations, we are spoiled because we raise our finger and we tell our outsourcing vendor to say jump and they say how high. Are our own employees ready to do it and that to deliver the right quality that we have come to expect out of any work that is being done for technology by the outsourcing vendor? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back and discuss.
Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now toll free 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
Mom? Dad? How long should I wait for you? Mom? If I'm at soccer practice. What if something happens? Will you come get me? Should I stay where I am and wait for you? Or go to Grandma's house since it's closer? Shouldn't we pick a place to meet?
There's no reason not to have a plan in case of a terrorist attack.
Mom, if you're not home, should we go to the neighbor's house? How do we keep in touch with each other if the phones don't work? Should I be worried how we all get home?
And some extremely good reasons why you should.
Can you tell me?
Everybody should have a plan. Take 5 minutes to talk about where you'll meet and how you'll get in touch with each other in an emergency. For other things you can do to be prepared, visit www.ready.gov. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Ad Council.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
When it comes to business,
You'll find the experts here.
Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjo Gal.
Welcome back. So, are we ready truly for IT insourcing? Because all along, most companies who have outsourced, they were able to enjoy, up-to-the-minute updates and the best practices that have been implemented and the SLAs, split-second 5 nines. There's so many things that they've totally enjoyed. Now, if they want to insource, are they having the internal capability in terms of people, the process, the technology, and the intent to provide that 5 nines top-notch quality by their own workforce? How much more groundwork will they have to do before they can even do something like that? Or they just set the expectations, guys, we're going to give you delivery 5 notches below what we got from an outsourcing vendor in case you're ready for insourcing, but if that's the only choice, that's what we can deliver. Ashwin, what do you think?
I mean, that's a legitimate issue, but I think, what would happen is, given the reality people are facing, again, this I bring it in the context of short term, I believe that aspect should be fine. And why I believe is there are lots of, I obviously, will take it slightly differently and say the workforce today, especially the workforce in the U.S. and let's say the U.S. for this example, graduating out of the colleges today are much more savvy about a lot of things around the space of IT, assuming that there is enough of them and they are trained for technologies. I would rather put the challenge back on the enterprises. For example, are we ready for having this kind of younger workforce who are used to, let's say, faster laptops at home than at work, who are used to faster connection speeds at their colleges than perhaps in a highly firewalled, highly policy-driven and extremely rigid enterprise? So I would put the challenge back to the enterprises to think, hey, are we looking at the profile, what we call the profile of the anywhere worker, which has changed in the last 10 years? When we began outsourcing, the profile was X. Today, not a lot, but a substantial portion of the people who come into the workforce are Twittering, are extremely savvy on IM, share files on every single method. Can solve problem going to the internet and then post a code snippet and some solutions come right back from somewhere. So the solution for insourcing would be not only to look whether, as you said, the quality drops, which is a very valid concern. It also would be posed to an leadership of an enterprise to think, are they ready to adapt to this slightly different profile of what Yankee calls the anywhere worker?
John?
Your opening question that Ashwin gave a good opinion on there's two types of enterprises with key sourcing right now out there. There's the enterprise or the corporation that has strategically sourced a high percentage of their IT community, maybe all of operations and all of day-to-day services. However many people need to be sitting in the enterprise versus how many can be anywhere, as we've talked about, anywhere in the world to continue that operational and service fact, as well as the forward development and improvement of the suite of tools for the corporation in their information systems. Others have either a split or a far lesser percentage of their IS sourced. And I think those organizations appear to be the ones that are doing further evaluation as to where and how they source successfully on an ongoing basis. But once you have a very large strategic sourcing accomplished, you have probably accomplished a scale back of your internal capability to the point where it's exceptionally anemic, and you cannot rapidly rebuild that internal intellectual property to either operate and service your day-to-day capabilities, as well as extend it into doing new projects, because you have very few in-house resources available to start that from. But if it's been a smaller section of your overall IS resource has been sourced, then there's a lot of alternatives out there as to how you can go forward with bringing that in-house, bulking up, taking advantage of the management team you already have, just bringing on more perimeter workers to accomplish those tasks, etc.
Now, if we wanted to get IT in-house, for the most part, maybe partially even, there's still an upfront investment. Are we ready for making that investment? 30 seconds, very quickly, please give your thoughts.
You start with key management and all of the resources needed to sit somebody in a seat and surround them with the tools to get the job done. Is it costly? Probably 50% of 1 year's salary per person brought in, and then that drops off to its normal cost in future years.
Ashwin.
Yeah. For insourcing to be the in thing, that is one absolute trade-off that has to be made. Initial investment will have to be put in, investment in leadership, in processes, in governance, hiring people, getting people in their seats, and making it functional is the cost of doing business the in way. So, yes.
On behalf of the show, I'd really like to thank you, both John and Ashwin. Great thoughts on IT insourcing. Hopefully it will become the in thing, and it truly will help the economy and the workforce in general get people jobs and still allow organizations to meet their strategic and tactical objectives. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So IT outsourcing, or rather insourcing now, we have got used to the word outsourcing so much that I keep saying that. IT insourcing can definitely contribute to making a nation self-reliant and even would nudge everyone to build internal competencies to the level that we've come to expect from an outsourcing organization with respect to people and processes. So in some cases, it may prevent organizations from being able to scale or extend as needed, because of which they went out in the first place as outsourcing. But in other cases, bringing it in-house, that is IT in-house, would also require blessing from the top management and some convincing from the internal IT staff that they can really handle it. One of the ways to have internal IT is to get this insourced is to have them compete with outsourcing vendors to see where they stand. And at all times, we should remember that it should be a business decision versus emotional for it to be right. And yes, we want to create IT jobs. However, if dollars are spent on IT, value should actually be delivered. Thank you again for listening to CIO Talk Radio. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Join Sanjog Aul next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific for another hour of CIO Talk Radio.